We've all been sort of reading in the newspapers about what's the impact of all the tariffs.
Mhm.
Well, we're in the tech space, and there's one tool that every single one of us has to rely on every single day. That's our PC.
Mhm.
PC prices are predicted to go up by 20% just as a direct result of the tariffs.
Wow.
So companies that are, the companies that we all work on, those mid-market small enterprise companies that have hundreds of employees and are getting ready to do a massive hardware refresh are going to find themselves over budget
Yeah.
and underappreciated because they're buying the same gear that without the tariffs would have been 20 to 40% less.
Wow. That's incredible, that pricing difference.
Yeah.
Wow.
Welcome to Podcast Wise, Perspectives, Cybersecurity, and AI. In the high stakes world of enterprise technology, the transition from prevention to resilience is no longer a suggestion, it's a survival requirement. Today, we are joined by Gary Coben, a seasoned executive with over 40 years of experience navigating the evolution of telecommunications and cloud infrastructure. From his early days at SkyTel during the pager era to his current role as a leader at a top-tier global managed service provider, MSP Xtium, Gary has seen every major shift in the digital landscape. He is a powerhouse in the channel community, known for scaling organizations from the ground up and generating over $60 million in annual recurring revenue. But beyond the numbers, Gary is a strategist who understands the, quote, human element of leadership. Whether you are a CISO balancing security with innovation or a CEO looking to drive cost efficiency in a volatile economy, Gary's insights offer a masterclass in professional foresight. All right, let's get started. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Hey, Gary, how are you?
I'm good, Finn. Thanks for having me today.
Of course, you are so welcome to be here, and I appreciate your time. So let's jump right into it. Gary,
Yeah.
you've been a forefront of the telecommunication and cloud evolution since the 90s, from the pager era to at SkyTel to the AI-driven cloud of 2026. If you could send one alphanumeric page back to your 1994 self about the future of technology, what would those 20 characters say?
You got to hit me with this one. First of all, again, I want to say thank you for having me. But if I had to send a guy reminding me how old I am, if I had to send myself one 20 character message, I would say saving customers money is the thing that got you to where you're at, and it will be the thing that will continue to get you where you're going. And I think we talked about that a minute ago that, a lot of what we all do is, be able to go to customers and say, if I could show you a better way to do X and save you money, do we have a basis to have a meeting? I think
Mhm.
we're still trying to open the doors that way. So I think it's critical that we show our community that clients are still interested in saving money.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, even with today's economy, not only businesses, but also individuals. Individuals are also looking to save money, and along the way with the business are trying to help the individuals to save money.
Well, it's
Because like if you go down the chain at, let's say, Target, if they have to up their price because they're spending more money on, let's say, technology, right? That uh that cost will dwindle down to the consumer.
case in point. It's so funny. We've all been sort of reading in the newspapers about what's the impact of all the tariffs. Okay?
Mhm.
Well, we're in the tech space. And there's one tool that every single one of us has to rely on every single day. That's our PC.
Mhm.
PC prices are predicted to go up by 20% just as a direct result of the tariffs.
Wow.
So companies that are, the companies that we all work on, those mid-market small enterprise companies that have hundreds of employees and are getting ready to do a massive hardware refresh are going to find themselves over budget
Yeah.
and underappreciated because they're buying the same gear that without the tariffs would have been 20 to 40% less.
Wow. That's incredible, that pricing difference.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, in Gartner's 2025's outlook suggests a move from outright prevention to cyber resilience. From a channel and service provider perspective, how do you advise C-suite's leaders to reallocate budgets to reflect this? Not if, but when reality.
Well, I think one of the challenges that all the security providers have, including us, distribute our products through our channel community is, and we fear this, of course, is that we don't want any TA out there to ever tell a customer, if you buy my solution, I guarantee you'll never have a breach. Because I'm not the kind of guy that likes to sell on, fear.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter is that the budgets company are spending on security, what is it? The best defense is a strong offense, right? At some point, you're going to have a security breach. Do you have your data backed up? Do you have a DR plan? Have you tested it? That whole concept is about resilience is more about where do you land if it happens? And I think, again, from Xtium's perspective, because as we spoke about earlier, we're the ninth largest MSP in the world.
Which is impressive.
Thank you. What it is that we do is we are people's outsourced IT provider, which is more than just, manage my Meraki network. It's more than manage my Fortinet network and my Comcast circuits. It has a lot to do with, being in the very front. As the MSP, we see breaches long before anybody else is going to feel those breaches because we're monitoring and managing people's environment on a 24/7 basis. I think that, again, as we spoke about earlier, outsourcing IT, one, is very cost effective. And I want people to know that if I outsource my help desk or I outsource my managed network services, if I outsource my field technicians, it's always more cost effective than if I do it in-house. So that's that whole concept of, can I save money? The second thing, though, is, when you're the MSP, you have visibility into the environment. Now companies are relying on a third party like an Xtium that's bound by terms of our SLA to not only manage the environment, but manage the potential risk associated with that environment.
Okay. And also, like, if you were to do in-house, you don't have that 24/7 aspect of things, right? Because in-house, the workers are usually 9 to 5, right? And then sometimes you might be able to get somebody that works the night shift or like the afternoon shift, the 5 to what was that? 8 hours after that? Whatever the case may be. Like, I'm trying to calculate fast, but whatever 8 hour period after 5 o'clock, because let's say you have two individuals that are able to work and have that staggered shift, right? But
So you bring up something that I think is very interesting. In 2026, customers have invested in an enormous amount of tools that are running 24/7, tools that are sending alerts, and and the problem is, how do you correlate all those tools into something that's useful?
mhm,
So this is the very interesting thing about MDR and vulnerability
EDR,
scanning and SIEM and all that, is that there's lots of tools out there, and those tools are designed to create logs. But unless somebody's correlating all that, which is to what you spoke to, and that's why, again, it makes sense to outsource it, have somebody else do it, because you just can't, again, we are dealing with the reality of the fact that IT people are expensive,
we
right?
are.
The other thing you have to deal with is that, IT people are highly in demand, so many companies are dealing with the fact that the one guy that knows our environment just got recruited by AWS. Now what?
Yeah, exactly.
So again, I think you raise a very interesting point about you never have enough people.
Mhm.
That's why it's better to outsource it.
Yeah, because then the outsourced company has the team already,
You're right.
right? And also they can have, let's say somebody is sick on the team, they have coverage already because they already have that personnel covering. So you guys have enough coverage.
Exactly.
Whereas in-house, you have two individuals, God forbid that both of them get sick at the same time.
I think the other thing that's interesting too is there are huge companies out there. Take American Express. They have 2,500 people in the IT department. They have the economies of scale. But your average company that's got 250, 500 employees, right? What do they got? 3 people, 4 people running IT.
Mhm.
And that's where the problem comes in. That's why it'd be better to use those people. I think earlier we talked about the challenges associated with launching commercial AI. Well, if IT doesn't have time to do it, how's it going to be successful? So I always use this old saying that our parents taught us: you can spend all your time making money, but all the money in the world won't buy you more time.
Exactly. Now, moving on to this recent EY studies, it shows a 10% gap between CISOs and CEOs regarding their confidence in current defenses. How can executive bridge this communication chasm to ensure cybersecurity is treated as a growth enabler rather than a cost center?
That's a tough one, and I don't know. I don't specifically know the answer to that.
Hmm.
I know that it's very difficult to, like, I look at it this way, especially as I'm staring through the camera at you right now. You're young, you're not worried about, if I knocked on your door and said I want to sell you insurance, I want to say a life insurance in case you die. Well, the very first thing that goes through your head is, I need this. And I think, again, you have CEOs trying to run the business and you have CISOs trying to protect the business.
Hmm.
And CISOs need more money to protect the business, but they're not going to get it because what are they selling? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Which is why what I've learned from all the TSD sessions that I've been at is that budgets for security, I mean, even what they anticipated they would sell from a security perspective continues to go down year after year after year, regardless of how much a breach costs. If it's what's that saying is like, if you don't know you need a fire extinguisher until your house is on fire.
Yeah, exactly. That's a funny saying, though, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So many VPs are struggling with tool sprawl. How do you help organizations transition from a tool heavy approach to a process driven architecture without disrupting their current digital transformation roadmap?
Now that's an excellent question. And I think again, our approach has been, we realize that customers have an investment in a tool set.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I think that there's a lot of people out there, oh, you need endpoint protection. Well, everybody's got endpoint protection. They've already made an investment in Arctic Wolf, or they've made an investment in CrowdStrike. So a good MSP wants to utilize the investment that the company's already made and supplement that with the things that they still need. And
Mm.
again, in the big picture of security, you've got everything from endpoint protection, the vulnerability, to SIEM, to SOC. What I have found is that what most people are looking for today is they're looking for SOC. They're
Uh-huh.
looking for somebody to correlate all the tools that they've already invested in so that they're not chasing the false positives and they're only chasing the problems that are real. So, yes, there's a lot of tools out there. And like we talked about earlier, those tools are doing their job. They're sending warnings and they're sending logs. But those logs reveal a lot of false positives, a lot of
Uh-huh.
problems that aren't really problems. That's why most companies are needing SOC services, because that's really where all the logs come into and get correlated by a third party. But our approach has been one of, if you want us to do security, we want to be able to take advantage of the tools you've already invested in and only supplement that with the things you truly need.
Yeah. Because we don't want to buy, you don't want to sell them the fluff, right? Like extra things that they don't actually need.
Well, it's that concept of, you're shopping for a car and the one that's on the lot has what you want, but has a bunch of stuff you don't want,
Yeah.
well, you don't have a choice. If you want that car, you're getting the stuff you don't want. And I think, again, the mistake that a lot of the security vendors are making is, yeah, great. I see you've already made the investment in CrowdStrike, but in order to use us for SOC services, you got to buy our endpoint.
Hmm.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because then do you not go with the SOC services because you already invested in CrowdStrike, let's say? Or do you go with the SOC services and get their product, their endpoint, plus also stay with CrowdStrike? That's double the money on endpoints, right?
And that is the problem. That
Hmm.
really truly is the problem. Like, the good security vendors out there want to be able to separate their package. I want the power windows, I want the power door locks, but I don't need a sunroof.
Right.
Same thing. I need a SOC solution, but I don't need endpoint because I've already invested in endpoint. So my suggestion to the companies out there that are in search of that is, when somebody tells you have to buy something you've already invested in, find somebody else.
Yep. Now, with nearly 50% of organizations reporting a lack of necessary cyber talent in 25-26, how should leaders rethink upskilling? Is it about hiring new experts or turning every employee into a human firewall?
Well, the answer is IT people are going to continue to go up in price. IT people will continue to be recruited. The answer is you need to outsource. That really is the answer. How do I get the people I have to be better and do more? I mean, that's the story of our lives, isn't it? How do I get people to do more for the same amount of money?
Hmm.
The fact of the matter is, if you're a company and you've got a skill issue, a people issue, a budget issue, outsourcing that solves that all. I'd much prefer to manage the terms of a service level agreement with a third party vendor than all the nonsense associated with running it myself.
That's a good perspective.
Yeah.
Now, for healthcare and finance leaders stuck with legacy systems, what is the most cost-effective first mile towards a zero trust architecture?
So I think what's interesting is you mentioned two industries that are heavily compliance focused. And I don't know a lot about it, but we're about to launch this, what we call CAAS, compliance as a service,
Okay.
right? And so, if you have a GDPR requirement, if you have a PCI SOC 2 requirement, if you are, have to be careful for HIPAA violations, or, that's where we've got our high trust certification. I think those industries, and I think, again, if I'm in an industry where compliance breaches are going to cost a lot of money, even more, I want to outsource. Even
Okay.
more. I hate to be driving the same point home, but I think that's if you're in a highly regulated industry, then you're auditable at any time. Try to keep all the lights on and prep for an audit, right?
Yeah, that's always difficult. I remember my husband going through audits, and those times were a lot of nights eating dinner out, I would say.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We used to talk about this concept of audits, and that just because a company buys their solution from Xtium, we don't make them compliant, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's um, an EHR, electronic health record breach, because somebody in the staff left my medical record on the front desk. Technology can't prevent that. However, when you start talking about an audit, the 100-question audit, if your environment is compliant, well, guess what? You still got 50 questions to answer, but 50 you don't,
Right. Yeah,
right?
because that 50 it will be inherited, right, from the
Correct.
MSP.
That's the attestation that people are looking for.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. It's good to know. Now, as a global regulations become more localized and complex, how should a multinational C-suite approach compliance to avoid it becoming a bottleneck for speed to market?
Well, that just reminds me of the fact, like, so you're talking about regulations like GDPR, which
Mm-hmm.
says a if I have a branch office in London, my data in London can't leave the UK. So right away, I can't be running a US based data center if I've got to keep all of my data local. I think again, what happens here is it's now like, who's got the scale to support that? Public cloud providers, right? It's your GCP, it's your Azure, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
AWS. We happen to be an Azure partner. So, if I'm trying to manage a multinational environment where compliance is the key, there's a high degree of probability that I'm going to have to utilize public cloud resources in those specific countries in order to meet those regulations. So again, CIOs need help. They
They
just
do.
need help, and they can't solve these problems out of your office in Maryland. They're going to
Yeah.
solve them. They're going to solve them through multinational vendors like Xtium.
Yeah. But I surely can help them get to you.
Bet you can. That's the name of the game.
Now, how do you see the role of the channel chief changing as AI begins to automate the sales and procurement cycle?
You know what? You're talking to a guy that's 64 years old. I still write all my own emails.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use ChatGPT or Copilot to do my work. I think AI is going to continue to help us do the small things. I was at IT Expo just last week, and it's funny. I had like 15 appointments, and virtual meetings like the one that we're recording on right now. As far as a guy again, that's I got less runway in front of me, and less to my career runway in front of me and a whole lot behind me. I'm just a believer that, the channel chief's role this is still a human business that requires human interaction. And sure, I can be sitting here talking to you wearing my slippers, but at some point, I want to get to know you more, and I can only do that in person.
Yeah, I
So
totally
I don't
agree.
think the channel chief's role is going to change all that much. I think that the channel seller's role is going to change a bit more,
Okay.
but I'm not sure that the guys in my role's job's going to change that much. We have to be able to cut through all the AI generated email to get to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it's more about the relationships and the connections.
At the end of the day, I like to think of it this way. My role as the channel chief is to do whatever I can to help you make money. And I understand how the business works. We
Mm-hmm.
talked about this earlier too. I understand that for the most part, we've been selling technology the same way for the last 50 years. I can save you money, Mr. Customer, right? I have access to hundreds of qualified vendors, but I can save you money and perhaps I can save you time at the same time. So that's a lot of what we're trying to drive in
Mm-hmm.
in the work that we do.
Absolutely. Now, let's go a little bit personal. Throughout your 30-year career across major pivots in tech, what is the one leadership principle you've held onto that has never become obsolete?
I for me, and I wish it was 30 years, more like 40 years, but don't tell anybody.
No, I won't.
For me, and people reach out to me. I need to get paid for this. And, when is I was expecting this, but I only got that. I keep my inbox clean, still respond to everybody personally. And I don't avoid problems. I don't always have the answers, but I certainly don't avoid the problems. As I look back over my career, being direct, being accessible, right? We all have the ability to hide behind email and voicemail. I'm not one of those guys.
Hmm.
If you call me and say, will you give me a call? I'll give you a call.
That's good. And that's really good.
I think so.
Now, looking back at your degree in communications and economics, which of those two disciplines do you find yourself leaning on more when sitting in a boardroom today?
The world's changed dramatically, right? If this was 10 years ago, and we were talking about what's it like to be in the TSD world, we wouldn't be talking about things like private equity sponsors and the like.
Hmm.
But fundamentally, there's a lot of money being thrown into our business right now, especially from private equity and venture capital, and which is great. I mean, our industry is now being recognized for what it is.
Hmm.
Fact of the matter is that the mid-market and enterprise space is now being dominated by the technology advisors, and those technology advisors in turn are utilizing TSDs to get access to companies like Xtium. As I think about, I still think about the things that I do every day is I communicate a lot, right? I communicate at events, I communicate on podcasts, I communicate one on one with people. I want to be clear and concise and to the point. I rely heavily in the fact that this is how we all make a living. So whether I'm in the boardroom talking to people about how to make a living, or I'm one on one talking to people about how to make a living, I lean on the finance elements in my career as well. But I still think, I think that one of the challenges that we've seen over the last 20, 30 years is a lot more reliance on technology and a lot less reliance on communication. And I think we're going to get back to that.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
we
so too.
need to be I think we need to be clear and concise and remember that we are human beings.
Yeah. And humans have a lot of emotions and have a lot of different perspectives and a lot of
I
feelings.
agree. Yes, yes. Especially when it comes to money.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Well, Gary, it is time. I appreciate so much that you took the time today to talk to me about any and everything about the Xtium and your thoughts on, you know, the talent gap and the future of, Channel Chief, and even on what your thoughts on, the principles of your career. So I thank you.
You bet.
And thank you guys for taking the time to take a listen. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.
See ya.